As we said, the New Hampshire primary is important, obviously, for all the candidates, but make or break, especially for one Chris Christie. So, the New Jersey governor, he'd been attacking all the challengers, and this morning he bagged what could be a big endorsement. Christie getting the support of Charlie Baker, popular Republican governor of Massachusetts, which of course neighbors New Hampshire. Baker lamented what he called the slide in the GOP, which led him to back Christie. But whether he wants to or not, Christie continues to have to answer questions about Bridgegate. Sometimes when voters or journalists ask, sometimes he just mentions it in his stump speech, like last Saturday in Iowa. That's when Christie said about Bridgegate, "Let us remember one thing, everybody. This was a traffic jam. This was not a murder. This was a traffic jam. Bad, yes. Unacceptable, absolutely. Fireable offense, you bet. All those things happened. Except Bridgegate refuses to go away." Just this morning, indicted former Port Authority Executive Director and Christie appointee Bill Baroni and former Christie aide Bridget Kelly, they were in federal court in Newark for yet another Bridgegate hearing. But it turns out there's another connection linking Bridgegate to Christie's presidential campaign: money. Listen to this. Star-Ledger reported that the single biggest source of campaign cash for the Christie presidential campaign last quarter, it came from the law firm of Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher. They were employees. They gave Christie's campaign more than $65 grand. Now you say, okay, so what? Who are Gibson, Dunn and Crutcher? Well, they're the same firm that were hired to defend Christie in Bridgegate and whose partner, Randy Mastro, remember him? He ran the internal investigation that he said cleared Christie of any wrongdoing in the case. Though their findings, they've been widely criticized, if not dismissed, in part for not conducting enough interviews, not doing thorough enough work, and not sharing their findings and their data. They're also being paid for, you guessed it, the taxpayer. The New Jersey taxpayer is in the pocket for, as the Record reported, $8 million for legal work as it relates to Bridgegate. 80% of the total cost to taxpayers of Bridgegate to this point. So the firm that's got millions from the taxpayers to defend Christie they're now the largest donor to Christie's campaign. And there was even more of an update, right, Andrew?
Well, that Baroni and Kelly appearance in court today, they were given permission to subpoena the records from the Mastro investigation because Mastro hasn't shared them, or at least that law firm that, oh, by the way, is the single largest contributor to the Christie campaign. So not only are they not sharing their information, but now the two former Christie aides who are on the hook here now have the right to basically file paperwork to be able to see those records to try to defend themselves.
Hey, and my problems, Don, with this are a couple. First of all, if people remembered, we covered it, that Mastro presentation, it was the biggest dog and pony show, the most dismissible report. Okay, and you know what? I believe officials, public officials, should be able to draw, not on their own pocket to pay for legal counsel and representation when it has to do with their office. However, $8 million and they're lining your campaign coffers? We don't think there's any kind of definite conflict of interest here, or I'm the taxpayer paying basically for your legal fees and you now are going to be paying him campaign money to, I mean, come on. It just stinks.
I'm glad you used that word. It does stink, but it does appear to be legal. As you were reading your lead-in, Richard, I had a flashback to me sitting in federal court as Shelley Silver was on trial for sort of the same thing. And it appears that Mr. Silver is headed to federal prison, and the prosecutor in that case, you know, they're talking about him possibly running for mayor. It's the way that business is done. It shouldn't be that way. But even without Bridgegate, Christie was done. And that's not to minimize the impact of this, because we still don't know when the other shoe is going to drop and whether it's going to drop at the footsteps of the governor.
You surprised it's taken this long? That we still haven't gotten any advancements? Wouldn't you thought before the end of last year we got some more?
No, the prosecutor's taking his time, and frankly, it's better to let the presidential race get out of the way so that there's no implication that what you were doing were political.
Plus, what's the old expression? If you're going to shoot the king, don't miss.
Yeah.
You know, you only get one shot at it.
Correct.
That's maybe not a great metaphor as I keep going with this, but if you're going to go after Governor Christie, make sure you get him. I mean, make sure you've got enough.
People are cynical about lawmakers all the time, but this kind of stuff,
it's the worst.
It does. You know, you shouldn't do this. I mean, fine. Why take the money from them? You know, I don't know.
And you know what everyone thinks. I mean, and I suspect they're correct. the firm said, okay, we got this incredible client.
Yeah.
Okay, all you partners, whether you work, pony up. So, you know, Joe Schmo and his wife, or Jane Schmo and their husband, you know, they just took $2,000 out of their personal account to pay for a contribution to a client of the firm. It really stinks. It makes people so cynical about governing. He could have said, I don't want it. He could have returned it. He could have never asked for it. Or his firm and the people around him, his advisors, should have said, this looks terrible.
The really bad part is
65 grand too, you know? I mean, that's my point. It's not, to our knowledge, that they went to a PAC and wrote, you know,
No,
150
it's
grand.
individual.
It's individual checks they went around to do. And again, Scott, for me, my problem, just what you said, but even before that, when Randy Mastro did this whole presentation, it was so patently, they came up with a verdict before the investigation where they were going to look, hey, the governor's all good here. But then the taxpayers had to pay for all that? I mean, this is on the heels of somebody in his office shutting down the bridge for political payback, and now the taxpayers once again are on the hook, if you will, to pay for a dog and pony show. And now we find out that those same attorneys that were paid with taxpayer dollars are now writing checks. I mean, it speaks to hubris, and it also, as I said before, just outlines once again the worst that people believe in lawmakers, because not everybody would do this.
No, I mean, but you know what's extraordinary? This is a former federal prosecutor.
Right.
What in tarnation is he thinking? I mean, even to have something that appears that way from any vantage point looks bad. This guy was a prosecutor who went after people who were corrupt. What happened here? I mean, it begs how many
Christie
questions?
you're referring to?
Yeah.
But remember, Christie, I didn't mean to cut you off. He's not the only former federal prosecutor. Remember, the man in question, Randy Mastro, was chief of staff to Mr. Prosecutor himself, federal prosecutor Rudy Giuliani. So these are all federal
know
prosecutors.
better. They all
yes.
should know better.
I didn't mean to cut
Let's
you
go
off.
further down that wormhole. Christie only got the job as U.S. Attorney because he was a big fundraiser for George W. Bush. So it's all, there's so much of this that's just all about money. The other part that galls me in all this, in addition to the fact that New Jersey taxpayers essentially gave $65,000 to his campaign, even though they didn't have anything to say about it, but there was no disclosure, and there didn't have to be because it's two separate races. If this was donations to his gubernatorial election, they would have to disclose it. But because it's a different campaign for president, like, I mean, if I hire a Vanderhoff firm to do something while and then he kicks the money back to me, like you would need to tell that to people.
Is that an offer?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take
And the
that
other thing
money,
is,
whatever you.
I own this excuse that, well, somebody should have, he should know better. Don't blame it on the staff. The guy should know better, in this case, the governor, whoever the lawmaker is. They all know this is wrong. So,
But with all, you know, this is a person with hubris every step of the way. This is not a unique,
remember the
out
mop
of
line
character.
a couple weeks ago with the storm? You
mop,
believe
the
that?
way he treated this, to say that it's, you know, basically minimized this in the greatest city of the world, that he basically blocked off access. I mean, it's extremely, he is a very narcissistic person, and he uses politics for his own good, and I think it really is a disgrace.
And once he comes back from New Hampshire, assuming that he's done, what is he going to be able to do in Trenton? I mean, how can he actually govern the state at this point? He's lost
Well, he hasn't been there for a long time, don't worry
That's
about
true. He'll have to reintroduce himself to the state of New Jersey.
Well, he did come back for the storm, and maybe he'll come back on Monday. We shall see here. Actually, he won't. That'll be interesting. Huge storm
can't
bearing down.
Can't imagine that he comes back.
Yeah, I just thought of
he's
that.
not gonna do that.
Monday, when there's going to be a state of emergency potentially, I don't want to get to it, but let's say there was. He's got to stay there the eve of the campaign. Ooh, all right. Coming up next, everybody, we're going to go across the river to New York. City Council today just voted, and they passed a bill. What, you ask? Well, to hike its own pay, and I'm not talking by a few bucks, by a lot. Taxpayers probably aren't too happy about it, but I'm going to ask this table, will higher pay help the city attract better talent? We'll be right back.